Hello once again. If you're following my channel, I am the real biological dad of Deadpool, Domino, John Wraith, and what is compiled to be X-Force. Pretty interesting. I got to go a little bit into a video I saw by Shinobikaz. Pretty interesting post. He catches Fabian Lying signing Deadpool posters. And he claims to be a creator of Deadpool. So between him and Rob, they can't decide who created the character. You know, was it him? What was the story? They still, they touch each other, these two. Anyway, kid asks him, he goes, what was your inspiration for the character? Which was a pretty great question. And one of the other little kids there goes, Deathstroke. And he turns and he goes, no. And then he goes into his development of the character, which is a total fabrication, by the way. Anyway, great question there by Shinobikaz. Check out his video. You'll see him stutter. The real reason why Deadpool was created around Cable was to introduce my characters who were basically unknown at the time. 1986, 1987, they weren't known by the public. They weren't known until Rob and Fabian worked on a book with my stuff and put my stuff out there. They sold the most comic books for that company ever. And it was by a guy like me who had nothing to do with those guys. So I find it pretty interesting that you got a guy like Rob. He supposedly created Cable, but wait a minute. The original story was he worked on it with Louise Simonson. So what's the truth, Rob? You didn't really create the character, did you? This guy probably didn't create half the shit that he claims that he created. And you need to take a serious hard look at him, but you got to look back in print pre-internet in order to catch him. Because his lies are slipping, and Fabian in this video by Shinobikaz, his failure is complete. He already completed it. He said, the kid asked him if he was based on Deathstroke, and he said no. But if you go back in print, you guys that know anything in print, you have any of them old magazines, it was a joke between him and Rob Liefeld about the character to get even, to do a little tomfoolery or a little jostling with DC was what it was really about. That's their story, they say. Now it's a joke between editors on there. The fact of the matter is people float back and forth between those companies. Guys like Jim Lee, who worked for Marvel and then transitioned, he's over there running DC. Guy like Liefeld that was with DC and transitioned back over to Marvel. These guys are in that industry, and that's what they did. So, as far as their creativity, they're just blown out of the water right there because Fabian said it himself. And he couldn't even tell the story of what was the creation of Deadpool about. The creation of Deadpool, like I said, it was the injection of new characters into a scenario. And let me tell you something else. Putting a team together was very difficult to do. Because I had to take into consideration people like the Fantastic Four, people like the Avengers, people like the West Coast Avengers, the X-Men, X-Factor, Alpha Flight was big too. All these people had a strongman with them, and putting that together, I had to come up with the strongest person that they had at the time was Thunderbird, who wound up being hurt at the time. And he was wounded as a result of going out into something and getting hurt, but then he comes back and they renamed him Warpath for whatever reason. And, same way with putting other characters together like Cannonball, who was up and coming. The biggest thing about New Mutants at the time was they drew them like they were adults and not like teenage kids, was what the biggest thing was. And that was a friend of mine, Brian, that used to talk about that all the time. They drew these girls like women. They drew their guys like men, or young men, but not teenagers. Big difference. So that was the basis of forming that team, to have a group of people respond and stomp out threats ahead of time. And the idea of Deadpool himself was to have him be misunderstood and to have him be a chaotic good character if any of you guys out there are role play or know anything about role playing, because I had done that back in those days. And in my original artwork that I had sent to Marvel, and I have a copy of, it says in the left-hand corner, FASERIP, phase rip, which was basically fighting, agility, strength, endurance, reasoning, intuition, and psyche. And all that stuff was the basis of those characters. And then their powers had a strength level between 1 and 100, you know. Or if you went up beyond 100, it was, you know, shift X, Y, and Z, or class 1000, 3000, and so on, you know. And that's how they did things. And that's another question. Ask Rob and Fabian how much role playing they did in the 80s. That would be an interesting question. Probably not, but you know. But anyway, that's my little rant for today. You just got informed by the actual creator, the actual originator of the character, not the BS that these guys are out there being paid and showing up at these conventions and lying to the public. So that's my little channel for today. I will be back soon. I am in the process of doing other things. Stay tuned.